You pop it on. Okay. So yeah, welcome. Those comments are really interesting. And again, it comes back to what we've been talking about all this time about, you know, there's that fine line in cultural misappropriation and just not knowing. So for somebody to take off and be a brand new teacher, as oftentimes 200-hour teachers are, we're brand new teachers and we bop out and we're so excited to share all this wonderful information. Until my Soya training, was never told the Kapalabhati is not meant to do at night, or that Surya Namaskar is not meant to do at night, because it's taking away from the actual meaning and reverence of the practice and turning it into a fitness exercise. And can we be held accountable for that? No, we can't, because I'm going to shut this window as we're talking. We really can't, because sometimes we don't know what we don't know until somebody points it out to us that we're doing something that is in error. And I think with our discussion with cultural misappropriation and those things, once we have been given the knowledge, it's a responsibility. It becomes a responsibility to change the way we do things and make sure that we share that same information with others. I know when you were saying alternate nostril, the technique, the alternate nostril technique or pranayama practice of in the left, out the right, in the left, out the right, can be done in the evening, because that's a calming energy, in and then out. However, learning most recently that you have to have the activity before you can have the calm. You have to have the action before the relaxation. As Dr. Ananda states, spanda nishpanda. It's action versus relaxation. So until we know these things, it's very hard for us to teach them in an appropriate time frame and place. And again, though, once we do know them, it's almost an obligation to us. Do I want to say, yeah, let's run out there right away and tell the teacher in the class that we've just taken, hey, you just did that all wrong? No. No, we can't, but we can continue to teach the way we teach and maybe plant seeds for others to understand and know. Because obviously that person doesn't know what's going on. You had something else you wanted to share too, Patty, that we had talked about, and I'm trying to remember what it was. You had mentioned in a message to me.
Yeah, I'm just going to look that up.
Yeah, because I was thinking it would be a good point to talk about it today, because we're almost kind of through this piece of it. We'll move on next week to what is yoga. So the topic next week will be, what is yoga? We'll talk about all the aspects of yoga and things like that. So if you find it, they'll let me know.
I did.
Oh, you did? Go ahead.
Yeah. So the thought that came up after we met last day was informed consent. And when we are explaining and giving information and giving it in different steps or different types of modifications, it helps students to understand the practices of the asanas, but it also helps them to determine what can their body do versus them being in a position maybe that doesn't feel comfortable for them, and for them to feel that they can say, you know what, that doesn't feel comfortable for me.
Okay. Point well taken.
Informed consent.
Yeah, informed consent. And we, again, know that that's something that's taught all along. And in most classical traditions, there are no hands-on, there are no adjustments, there are no props, there are no things that come into play other than your own bodily awareness. And when we know that something doesn't feel right within our bodies, we should be and have the right to change it up and do what we need to do. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Curious. Elena, Marianne. Patty, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that I think that it empowers people to be able to talk about what is happening within their body. Also, they're going to be at a different, their body might be at a specific level of being. Like, for example, if they're in Anjasana and they do not feel comfortable going out into a full lunge or even a partway lunge. I just was listening to something yesterday about how keeping the right angles of the legs can be really helpful for people who are new to Anjasana. And it helps them to move into that pose slowly and gradually to where, especially if they have tight hips, hip flexors or psoas is tight or their glutes are tight. And so I think that it's really important for people to be in a pose, but it might not look like how you and I might do it. It might be their way of doing it. I've been watching my grandchildren play, and my youngest grandchildren, and I've been really interested in how she moves her body. She moves it naturally into these different yoga poses. I'm just, she's only 2.5 years old, but she's moving her body in this way that's just very natural. And I think that when people see something, they might be able to model that, what we're demonstrating, but they may not look like us in how we're doing it. So
yeah, yes, and to have that constant beginner's mind for all of us. Beginner's mind is important. We need to know that, it may not feel right in my body. I've been doing something maybe 10 years, you've been doing it 5 years, and somebody walk in and doing it brand new. We have to maintain that beginner's mind. Everybody's at a different level and a different place in their practice. But to be able to teach it in the way, and I always like to say, to be able to teach it the way we were taught it classically, and the true meanings behind the asana practice and where they're coming from, and to teach things without saying the goal is to be in a full lunge. There is no goal to do anything. The goal is to feel comfortable in your own body with your own bodily awareness, taking you to a place that you understand what's happening between the breath and the body and the control of the mind. And it may be completely different for you, me, and 10 other people. It is. It's not may. It will be, based on our bone structure, based on our energetic patterns that have been happening, and the illness and the things that are happening to our body as a result of those energetic patterns. So yeah, that's something really, really important to think about. But again, coming back to teaching it the way we know it's to be taught, reminding others that I may demo this and it may look one way, but you may do it and find it completely different. Marianne just put a comment out here. I think Kapalabhati could be done in an evening class because it wouldn't exactly be done immediately before bed, and participants wouldn't necessarily be doing it the whole class. And you could be very, very right and very accurate, Marianne. And if you're doing, say, an evening class at like 6 o'clock or 5:30 or 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, depending on, again, the way I've been taught, it's a beautiful practice to cleanse the lungs, to cleanse the lower stagnant, lower lobe of the lung, to get things up and moving throughout the body. But it is very energizing. And it's something that action of the diaphragm pumping is very energizing to me. It may not be to some people, but if you're doing it in the evening, I would forewarn people. I think at least giving them that knowledge of if you do this and find it energizing to you, maybe it's something you might want to not do, and maybe do Sukha Purvak or Dirga Pranayama instead. But again, my perspective. Patty, go ahead.
It does say in our manual that it can be done morning and evening as a cleansing breath. And I have done it sometimes in the evening. What I was referring to is that certain types of pranayamas can really energize our body. And therefore, if somebody is determining or thinking or not participating fully in that, the reason behind it might be is because they may have done it before, and they may have experienced not being able to sleep. I know for myself, if I go to a 7 o'clock class and a teacher is teaching that, I cannot sleep that night. I have to do something different with my body. And I think just keeping in mind that it might not necessarily be disrespectful that they're not participating, but you know, I think maybe asking them afterwards, was something up with that, or they may have went to another class before. Like I'm referring to the person who was doing the headstand in the class versus doing the breathing work. And sometimes we do have to determine for ourselves what's right for our body. So I don't think that maybe it might not always be disrespectful.
Right. Yeah, we're all at different levels. So you are right, and it impacts us a little differently. But again, teaching things, it just keeps coming back to teaching what we know and sticking to what we know, and teaching it with the utmost respect for the culture with which this has come from, and giving people the options then and the awareness to know their own bodies and to make the choices that they need. There are, I know hot yoga, the Bikram style hot yoga specifically does a lot of the similar techniques a lot in the evening. The hot or the Kapalabhati type breath, which is done very different pattern of breathing. And most everyone seems to go away from that okay, but it's a very different practice. We had one last section that I wanted to touch base on that we stopped yesterday, 2 weeks ago, on yoga advocacy, that I wanted to touch base with and talk to you guys about before we wrap up this week and move on to what is yoga for next week. Yoga advocacy, and this is again from Dr. Ananda's notes on misrepresentation and misuse, denial, misuse, and then appreciation and respect. And when we're in that stage of misrepresentation and denial, someone for yoga advocacy advocates for yoga against the principles of Dharma, of yoga, and violates the meanings of yogic principles like yama and niyama by uplifting, redefining, reconstructing, and inconsistent cultural and moral frameworks. Someone who negates the value and content of the yogic tradition and its texts, using the negation to legitimize activities that contradict the teachings or have nothing to do with yoga values. So those of us that really know the yamas and the niyamas and the 8-limbed path of yoga, if we were to take that into completely different context, denying the actual meanings behind them and twisting them to suit what we're doing, would be denial. We know what we've got going on. For the column that they have about misuse, would be taking those and misusing and misrepresenting what appears to be cultural contents by redefining and reconstituting it into inconsistent frameworks that go against the principles of yoga and Dharma, or instrumentalizes the teachings for personal agendas, personal gain, and by misleading others, harms both the tradition and other yoga practitioners. And this piece of it, before we go any further, I often come back to the Bhagavad Gita and the sutras are two texts that are out there that have several commentaries. all written from a different lens and from a different perspective and from a different person at a different point in time in their life. I see those as, and again, I want your perspective on this, all three of you, because I see those as beautiful, beautiful texts that each person has tried to interpret in their own way, as I said, in their time frame, with their lens and their perspective, based on what's happening. If someone were to take those, though, and to me, that's, again, it's not misappropriation, but they're taking those to do their ability to do it, honor and respect, by teaching those in a way that they see them to be believed. If someone were to take the yamas and the niyamas and really go to town and reconstruct those completely, or the sutras, and write their own commentary to support their new business or to support their philosophy and their theory, and completely take them out of context, then that's misappropriation. Who's to say one person is right and one person is wrong? But again, it comes back to who's doing what with what intention. If we are doing it with the utmost purest of intentions to shed light on a topic or advocate for a particular yogic path or yogic lifestyle, I think it's appropriate. When they cultural appropriateness, when it comes to advocacy, advocates within the parampara system with permission of their guru, only speaking up or taking a stand where it is right to do so, consistent to the principles, teachings, and aims of the tradition in a culturally appropriate framework, and in a manner that maintains, promotes, and grows our Dharma. Where others are available who are more qualified to speak, advocates defer to knowledge holders as per the not parampara, but the sampradaya system. So it comes right back to what we were just talking about a minute ago, teaching what we know, talking about what we know, holding space for what we know. When we jump in over our heads and try and teach things that we really don't have a context or a background or information about, but going backwards to seek Mug's opinion or Dr. Ananda's opinion, or some that are gurus who that have been teaching and studying this stuff for years and years and years. That's the appropriate way to handle some of these things. I know that anything that I have ever questioned, and I know if any of you have taken trainings with Muggs or with Dr. Ananda, they're both very, very, very open to answering questions or supporting thoughts or supporting processes, or if I don't have the information or know the answer, go back and ask. They are there for us. That is that parampara system, that guru means to learn from the feet, at the feet of the master. And so when we don't know, it's always best to check and find out and ask. So we are being culturally appropriate by taking these teachings and moving them forward to others. Any thoughts, questions, or comments on that piece of advocacy? Because I know a lot of you wouldn't be here if you weren't so passionate about your yoga. It's a beautiful place to be. Yes. Go ahead, Patty.
Well, I'm trying to wrap my head around this idea of yoga advocacy, because when I heard you talking about it, I was getting the message that it's not really a good thing. It's not really, whereas, you think about advocacy, it would be that if I saw something that wasn't right around yoga, that I would maybe advocate that it needs to maybe be different. So can you help me out just a little bit to make sure I've got the definition right? Because what I wrote down was yoga advocacy negates and tries to legitimize their point of view and using yoga and different parts of yoga in a way that takes away from what the traditional yoga teaches. Is that correct?
That's correct to me as misappropriation of
Yes.
yoga advocacy. When one is, so I want to change the word almost from advocacy to passion, because when we are advocate, an advocate is a supporter. Advocacy is supporting something. So when we have a doubt in our mind about yoga and how we are supporting a teaching, we need to go back and find out the truth. It's just like the use of the 3 components of the mind. We see something, we take in what we think we see, we have developed an opinion about it one way or another, but do we know the truth? So we have to stop and ask ourselves, what is the truth here really, before I open my mouth and teach it and support it and send it on its way to my students or to people that I'm speaking with. I better darn sure know the truth. I better know what I'm advocating for. I better know what it is I'm passionate about and supporting, rather than taking something completely out of context and twisting it and supporting yoga in a way that it's not meant to be supported and that is inaccurate. Does that make sense or help? Coming back to, like I said, that we see something, the 3 components, the mind, manas, buddhi, and ahamkar. Buddhi, what is the truth here really? And it's always asking ourselves, what is the truth here really? What is it we are teaching our students? Are we teaching our students the truth? Are we teaching the students to the best of our ability? Are we teaching our students exactly what we know, or are we adding fluff and things that don't pertain or could cause harm, or were not meant to be portrayed as yogic? That's when I think it crosses the line. Marianne's got a comment, and I know a lot of my colleagues teach yoga as a fitness type class. My employer labels many of our classes as mind body flow class, but I teach it as a hatha yoga class, including pranayama meditation, using as much correct Sanskrit terminology and yoga philosophy as I can. Kudos to you, Marianne, because that's huge. That's a true, so to me, that's a true yoga advocate. You are advocating your yoga in a way that it's meant to be taken and taught. However, a lot of our colleagues, and we have this problem with 200-hour students. 200-hour students get done with their training and they go out and teach. And if they have a training that's not taught to do pranayama and meditation and the yoga nidra, the pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses at the end to slow down and absorb the benefits of the practice, my train of thought just kind of went sideways. We're doing it the way we know. We're doing it the way we've been taught. Those that are teaching it as a fitness exercise and not planting the seeds and not dropping the little hints of Sanskrit, or not dropping why we do certain poses and the benefits and the precautions and the modifications, it is a fitness class. It's not, to me, true yoga. It's called yoga and they're doing a mind body flow class. But at the same time, back when I first started doing my first 200-hour training that I took, I came out of there doing the same thing. I wasn't taught to demo. I wasn't taught to talk about the precautions and modifications. I went in and I taught a fitness class because that's all I knew. So I think now what I'm trying to do, now that I know more, is you have a beautiful opportunity, Marianne, to go out to folks in your studio, maybe teach a workshop and offer some of your trainings to staff, to teachers, maybe plant those seeds. And there's nothing wrong with a fitness class. There is nothing wrong. I know Dr. Ananda, just in the last few weeks, we've been going over in Team 52 in our yoga step-by-step program, Surya Namaskar, and how it's taught then to be done in the morning as the sun rises, facing the east, as reverence. It's holding this beautiful, beautiful Surya, the sun, the power, the reservoir of prana, Savitri, our life energy. We're giving honor to it as it rises. However, then all I knew before taking this training with Muggs and with Dr. Ananda, a vinyasa class did 100 sun salutations on a certain day of the year, or just to do a bunch of sun salutations to get your heart rate up and sweat. I never knew how important the reverence to the sun was. I never knew that you're supposed to take your clothes off and do it when you can in privacy, facing the east, so that our body gets the rays to the exocrine and endocrine systems that we need to help our bodies thrive and survive. So again, until we are told and know, we're teaching what we know. Is it right, wrong, or indifferent? But it becomes wrong when we're teaching it when we know better, or at least verbalizing it. So if I have an evening class and I'm going to do some Surya Namaskars, I often will do some, because it's just a beautiful way to move the body and connect the breath, body, and mind. But I also let people know the story. This is when it should be done. This is the story behind it. But we're doing a few of these right now to just move our bodies and get our bodies moving in a way that we can build some heat and warmth in the body. But always share the pure intention that you have, share the knowledge that you have, to let people know that the true history behind it once you know it. It's really hard. It's really hard to weigh both ends of that. But we have a gift and an ability as teachers now to share our knowledge that we have through these trainings, to teach the truth, or teach what we know to be the truth, and let people make their own decisions. Any other thoughts or feedback on that, Marianne, since you were the one that posed that? I participated in a really fun yoga event by the, I hope I don't butcher this, Ishkan Hare Krishna Society here in Calgary. We did 108 sun salutations. Yes, we were facing the east. Awesome. Yeah, see, and I've done it before myself on a summer solstice or winter solstice. We've done 108 sun salutations. And as we do them, though, it is fun. It is a wonderful experience to join those together. But again, knowing the story behind them, it's a beautiful opportunity to share the story. Why do you do 108 of them? Why would you do one of them? They're wonderful. They really are a lot of fun. I think the easiest way for me to sum up cultural appropriation and misappropriation is teach what you know, teach it with the purest of intention. If you don't know the answer to something, or you don't know how to truly work through something, ask somebody who has a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, as in, Muggs or Dr. Ananda or other gurus that have a wealth of information, or will seek to teach you the proper way. And then teach what you know the way you know it. I think it becomes a responsibility. And when we misuse our knowledge and our wisdom for self-gain or for the wrong purpose or intention, that's when it becomes misappropriation. Again, personal perspective. I don't know. That's the best way that I have to explain. the difference in appropriate and not appropriate teaching of yoga. Any other thoughts, Patty or Marianne or Elena, on your, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate? Where have you crossed that line, or where did you ever come through a place where you questioned what you were teaching, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, or even when we first came to that place of thinking about, wow, am I teaching this and giving it justice or honor? Because I really feel strongly that that hatha yoga class, maybe that the fitness kind of a class, is a teaching that still brings people in, still brings people to a place within their own bodies. Maybe it's a seed that plants it to take them one step further. I think we may have all started in that arena. Patty, go ahead.
I've had some pretty extensive training in mindfulness-based stress reduction. And when I was studying this, that's actually when I realized that I needed to be a yoga instructor. There are many different programs out there. And with respect to the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, the people who were running it, teaching it, I mean, these were, very professional colleagues. They were people who are they're co-founders of this program. And I'm sure you guys probably have heard of John Kabat-Zinn, and he is the forerunner of mindfulness. Some of the postures and the way that people move into the postures, you have to remember that it is for people who are experiencing some chronic pain. But even when I was in the program and learning and working with people, I discovered that, we're moving into some of these poses in a way that might not be not necessarily natural, but it's not yoga based. It's not using proper yoga terms and using proper yoga asanas. So for myself, keeping that in mind, I had then decided I was going to pursue to become a qualified yoga instructor so that I knew what I was teaching and how I could help people move out of chronic illness and chronic pain to be able to have more mobility in their body. So that's something that I discovered, and that is a program too that's, I don't think they're just out there to have self-gain. They certainly are interested in helping people, but I brought that forward to them as well. I brought the people that I was training with, I brought it forward and said, we're not qualified yoga instructors here. These are yoga asanas that you're sort of semi-teaching. They're not really, there was so much that they could have done differently. And after studying yoga therapy and learning ways to put different things like blankets on the body or using the bolsters and stuff, you can move so much more readily through wellness, to have wellness in the body when you have proper knowledge about how to support the body.
Yeah, and I think what we have to remember, and what I try really hard nowadays to get people to understand, if you're looking for a yoga program, if you're, ask your question, and this is what we'll talk about next week. Ask yourself the question, what is yoga to you? First and foremost, is it a fitness class? Then find a fitness instructor. If it is or not a fitness instructor, but someone who teaches yoga in that style. But do your research. Yoga is a way of life. Yoga is not just jumping on your mat for 45 minutes or an hour and a half. That's not yoga. It's a part of yoga. It's a very small piece of yoga. And if you're looking to deepen your own knowledge in that area, to find those that take it on as a whole lifestyle and not just that fitness aspect of it. Because there is so much more to it. Seek out a teacher, seek out a training, seek out what it is you're really wanting to learn, and find those that teach it the way that you're looking to teach it yourself. But again, I still have these battles of thinking, as Marianne was saying, I've taken 108 sun salutation class and done them. And I think when I first walked into my first yoga class, well, as a child, being brought up in that arena at 12 in a friend's basement learning, that seed was planted early on. Did I know then the importance of yoga in my life, or the patterns that I could change in my life? No, I had no clue. I was a little kid breathing and doing whatever the lady told me to do, and I know it felt good. That was all I knew. So even at a later age, when I finally got back into yoga, I went in for the fitness. I went in because yoga in context says it's all about fitness. It's about taking care of your health and your body, and your body, mind, and spirit, body, mind, and soul, bringing the three together. So it is a start. It is a place where we begin all over again to come back to learning about who we are in here by connecting to ourselves physically. And I think that's, again, though, where we get confused with, all right, now that I'm here, what do I do with this? And learning to honor everything that we've learned about the classical teaching and share those. I know how Elena got into yoga. Marianne, I don't know if you are willing to share at all your story a little bit about, I guess, where we crossed that line from knowing what we know now and these truths from learning the fitness aspect, or did you get into it from the get-go, knowing what you know? Or Elena, if you have something you want to share, please.
Yeah, I got into it through the fitness thing. Yeah, and realized that there was way more to yoga than just sweating.
Yeah, brings us to a deeper level. So again, picking your brain too, your thoughts on, the difference in appropriation and misappropriation. I don't know where your head is on that. I'm curious.
Well, that's a tough one, because like I've got a yoga instructor here that is an amazing teacher, but she doesn't use Sanskrit. She but it doesn't feel like a fitness class, because the words that she uses are very heartfelt and peaceful, and like she speaks the language, the yoga language, without the Sanskrit.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one.
And it is. And so this is what's really hard for us. And I, as much as I dearly love all my teachings and Ananda and Muggs and what I've learned, there have been several teachers that I've gone to that have done exactly that. They've forgotten their Sanskrit or didn't learn it, and they learned it the way they learned it, but the heartfelt pieces are still there. The warm and fuzzies are still there. The pieces that take you deeply into breathing your way into your awareness of your body are there. So I sometimes then pose this question, because I start to think about, okay, we know yoga has evolved from a place when thousands and thousands of years ago, when this happened and came about, yoga, to my understanding, at least from my teachings, at least with Dr. Ananda and Muggs and through Hari to Muggs, they were in nature watching animals move. Asanas, a lot of them are named after animals. Why? Well, because that's what they saw, that's what they watched, that's how they learned their behaviors and how they moved through life, through their breath, how they did things. and correlated that to the physical aspects of the body. So is it wrong? And just something to think about. That was in India. That was in Hinduism, the practices of doing it in that manner, or that was the way it was done. So fast forward all these years, and fast forward from India to the United States and to Canada and to further places where things are done in similar fashion without the Sanskrit knowledge, without the learning. They're still teaching what they know, and they're teaching and they're doing beautiful, beautiful work. We're doing beautiful things by taking people to places even without the use of Sanskrit. So does that make it wrong? I don't think it makes it wrong at all, because maybe, again, as we've talked about, we've all gone to yoga classes where no demos are done. And I hate to say it, but when I walk into a studio here in Traverse City, that's not what they want. They want a fast-paced cardio workout. They've just got off work and they want to sweat like crazy, and they want to drop in a heap on the floor and rest. If you can throw a word or two here and there about opening their heart space and feeling the energy, or about their Manipura chakra and finding their own personal power, or things like that, and it resonates with them, and it's not spoken in Sanskrit but spoken in English, is it wrong? I don't think it's wrong. So again, it comes back to me to thinking about, when we know what we know through our svadhyaya, our self-study and our growth and our teachings and our continued gains in knowledge and wisdom from those that we surround ourselves with, I feel we are obligated to some extent to speak and talk about what we are taught and know to be truth. Look how we've evolved. Look at where did each one of us start? In a fitness class, probably. And look how we've evolved. But we are now not using our Sanskrit. We are now not walking in and saying, oh, we're going to do Anjaneyasana and get you into this perfect lunge. And this is the goal. And through all this work, we're going to get into this perfect lunge, or it has to look like this, or it means something totally out of context. We're not doing that. And if we are, that's misappropriate. 1 second, Patty, I'll read this quickly. Marianne posted, and then I'll get to you. A friend did yoga at the YMCA recently, taught by an Indian-born instructor in Iyengar style. They did a 10-minute warm-up with arms circling vigorously. My friend has a long history of shoulder injuries, so she paused after a while to rest and was harshly scolded by the teacher. After class, she explained to the teacher why she was doing her own modifications. The teacher was not receptive of her explanation. Ooh, ouch. That'd be my last class with that teacher. And I will say to you, that, and it's really hard because I'm speaking from personal experience and personal perception, that the Iyengar tradition is very rigid in their system and in their belief and in their alignment and in what they do, as is Bikram, hot yoga. There is no soft, warm, and fuzzies there. And sorry, but to fault that teacher has no business treating people like that. But again, in that this is really interesting. I'm glad you brought this up, Miriam, because it's another comment that I'd love to have Dr. Ananda come to talk to us about. Maybe, just maybe, I could try and see if I could get him to come speak to us, even for a half an hour. I know he's very, very busy, but on this subject in specific, because there are teachers of Indian background that are teaching inappropriately and teaching, and who am I to say inappropriately, teaching the way they teach. And I feel like if Dr. Ananda were here, he might comment beautifully on the fact that this is an instance of somebody taking the classical teachings out of context and maybe misappropriating them to some extent for personal gain. And again, that's my perspective. Go ahead, Patty.
First, I just want to comment on what you've just been talking about, because I think my training has been with mugs, and mugs, it's hard to explain mugs. Mugs is very accepting and very kind, very compassionate. And when you work with her and you learn from her, you learn how to teach and be with people. Sometimes in our trainings, we can encounter being trained by someone, and I'm going to bring an example in here. My daughter is a dance teacher. She went to York University and took fine arts in dance. And she studied ballet. In her ballet classes, she experienced abuse. Abuse in that they would stretch the joints, stretch the body completely, sometimes not in alignment of how they're supposed to go. And because each student, she was a young adult at that point in time, bodies are still growing and changing. And she realized through that process, and of course through a lot of work that we've had to do with her as parents, we had to talk to her about and explain to her that that was a form of abuse. And I think that we do have to be aware of that when we are working and training with people, is how are we approaching people? How are we giving or speaking to people about some of the things that they may need to be aware of and do for themselves? When I heard you explain that or write that out, when I was reading it, I first thing that happened in my stomach was I got a knot there, because I was feeling that, wow, that person was obviously making the right modification for themselves. They were taking care of their body. They tried, but then they had to do something different. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm sure that most of us have seen the movie about Bickerman, yoga teachings and stuff like that, and the stuff that students went through. And you know, I think that it's just as I said, you have to sometimes be knowledgeable and really research out who's training us, what's their background, where they come from, because oftentimes we can teach what we've been taught. And so I think that, you know, looking at that person who's from that style of yoga, they were taught that way. Mm-hmm. They were probably treated that way in their class.
Mm-hmm. And they're only doing exactly that, teaching what they know. They're teaching what they know, and teaching, like you said, what they've been taught. And again, you know, it's really hard to think about, you know, who's the yoga judge? You know, when all's said and done, who's the yoga judge? Who's the person to correct those behaviors or correct those teachings, or even say that those teachings are wrong and we are right, or that, you know, we have, or I as a teacher have the best knowledge, or the most important, you know, the guru who taught it the way it was taught is the right. Who are we to say which guru is right or wrong or indifferent? As we talked about earlier, there are so many commentaries on the sutras and the Gita, and there are different viewpoints on everything. But I think as human beings, and we were just talking in Anatomy of the Spirit, we've got a book group that we meet every Wednesday, and we're in Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn. I think it's Carolyn Meese. And we are energy beings. And we all, and until we learn or understand that God actually resides in our heart space, until we learn to trust our own heart and understand what's right or wrong, or learn or be taught or feel what's right or wrong, when we're doing it in the wrong context and we know it, that's a problem. If that teacher from India taught your friend that exercise and that asana practice, and she stopped and got scolded for stopping because she has a shoulder injury, I can't, what kind of human being puts somebody through that kind of treatment when they're trying to take care of their own bodies? I have to stop and question that. And is it because they're taught that way? Okay, but even though we're taught that way, we've got to have a heart. We've got to know as a teacher, you're supposed to stay with this for 10 minutes. Okay, but it hurts. Oh, well, tough it up. That's not right. We know that that's going to cause injury. We know that that may cause pain. So I have to question and wonder people who teach in that fashion, that where are we missing out on that piece of being a human being, to even think of scold. I couldn't even imagine if somebody were doing something wrong in one of my classes, handling it in that fashion, or handling it in a way, if it doesn't feel right in your body, why are you doing it? Have to question that. Why would you push somebody to do something that doesn't feel right in their own body? As you said earlier, Patty, about, that informed consent and understanding, we do what feels right to us and not what we think looks right or has to look right, because we're all individuals. Go ahead, Patty. I know you're getting ready to say something. Please do.
I was also, before that was brought up, I wanted to share that I think sometimes even when we're in the fitness group or we're working with people and they want more of a fitness approach to a yoga class, I think somewhere in there you were saying about little seeds that can help. So my daughter is a yoga instructor. Both my daughters are yoga instructors. My daughter's friends are yoga instructors, and they became yoga instructors because of all the fun we used to have down in my basement in the studio. And the one, though, is I just had a really nice conversation with her because she is doing trauma sensitive yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking to me about that, about, how we approach people and how we say things such as, I invite you to try this, or think, go only as far as this feels comfortable for you. Providing different ways that people can move their body if they're not feeling comfortable, or if an emotion is coming up. And, really important way of being with people.
Mm-hmm.
I think yoga instructors who are trained properly with a really good school, they learn those things. They learn how to have that dialogue with students.
And I think first and foremost, our biggest responsibility as a yoga teacher is to learn to hold space for everyone at all levels. And if we can't walk in and be able to hold space for everyone, no matter what condition they have in their bodies going on, or where their thoughts are, or what's happening within their system or their bodies, just to order and dictate, this is the way we're doing it and this is how you have to do it. I love the wording and the opportunities that trauma sensitive yoga now has given us, the extra verbiage to use. Like you said, I invite, or it's teaching us to be humans. It's teaching us to recognize that 90% of the people standing in front of you in your yoga class today have been through some type of trauma, whether they realize it or not. How many people often in a restorative class or a yin class or in shavasana fall apart and into a heap of tears because they're surfacing and letting go of things that they don't even know they've held on to. So to hold that space and not be criticizing or judgmental or you have to do it this way. I don't know that I could call somebody like that a yoga teacher. Go ahead, Patty.
I think sometimes too, as yoga instructors, we have to trust our own gut instincts and our own intuition when we're working with students, and really have our eyes out there and watching them and seeing what's happening with their face, their own body cues, and I really liked how you said, like, holding space for each student that you're working with. In yoga therapy, there was a part of it where we had to, as a therapist, getting very close to a person's body and almost sometimes help a person move their body.
Right.
And I remember working with this one. We were in training at the time when this happened, because this girl was releasing a lot of emotion, and I remember seeing it in her face, and my instructor was sitting in the back part and said, keep going, push the boundaries here. And I was just looking, going, I don't think so. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes I had to stand up for myself and what I was experiencing with people, because you sometimes just have to hold that sacred space for that person, not interfere, not move in, not be too hands-on, but just be there for them, So.
And I think that's one of the biggest roles that we have. I really do. I feel it's one of the biggest roles that we have, is to share and hold space and then teach. Share and hold space. Get a read for how your students are feeling and what they're going through, and connect at an energetic level so that we can take them to places to heal their own bodies. Maybe we'll have a session at some point on that. What is a yoga teacher? What are our responsibilities as a yoga teacher? Might be a beautiful discussion to have. But next week we'll drop into what is yoga. What does yoga mean to you? I'd love for you ladies to come prepared, not next week, 2 weeks, with thoughts on what is yoga. Maybe I'll send out an email to everybody, but what does yoga mean to you? And what is the meaning of yoga to you? And we'll toss that around and talk about it in 2 weeks. I think that would be a great way to set off a discussion, and then maybe talk about what is a yoga teacher's responsibility to her students, his or her students. So thank you, ladies.
Thanks,
You're welcome. It's 2:00. I will see you in 2 weeks, ladies. Take care, Marianne. Thank you for joining us. And I'll throw something out, a little reminder to everybody, and we'll talk about that. What is yoga? Have a beautiful, beautiful week.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this for us.
Oh gosh, I'm enjoying it. It's for all of us, not just for a few. It's wonderful. Thank you. Take care, Patty. Yep, you too. Bye, Elena.
Bye.